Hey everybody, sorry I have wilder hair than usual. I'm having a hard time trying to tuck this sucker in today. I got a haircut and I have bangs now, and so in the morning your bangs are a little bit wild. So there we go. All right, if it falls apart or gets wild, don't be scared. Do not be afraid. All right, so Bridget Lynn Dolgoff, Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project YouTube channel, coming to you from the shed. And yes, it has been cold as hell. Like the high has been like 30 degrees and so super cold. But I'm surviving. All right. I've had worse winters. Living in my van, much worse winters. Where the high for the day was like 10 degrees. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to add some links in the bottom of the thing, but I just found this really cool guy named John Levi. And I'll put his links, a couple of his links, and kind of like, the rabbit holes that he's been going down and doing videos on. And then I'm also going to put, one of my favorite characters, Roger Spur. I'm going to put some of his mud fossil links down there as well. But I just want to talk to people about, a lot of people really hate my understanding. But there's like more and more proof to support what I've been telling people for like over 30 years. And what I've been telling people for over 30 years is about that every time, so you have extraterrestrials that are like worker androids that, it's like a beehive, and you have the worker bees, right? That do all the work, and that's their job, and, blah, 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 blah. So every time they wipe out, the messed up genetic humanoids that have been like crossed with animals, that have been too integrated by extraterrestrials, and it gets too funky. Like right now, it's too funky. There's what I suspect. I think in some cases there's been a great harvest, or if you want to call it a rapture, or you want to call it an ascension, whatever the hell you want to call it, but a harvest. And they've, taken by UFOs and craft people. Sometimes, rarely, are people taken for a good reason. Usually, if they are taken for a good reason, other than biological material or food, because we are eaten by other, beings. And I think that it happens slowly, and I think that they check us and they collect biological material, and I think that they speed up biological collection. I mean, almost every culture in the world has a Noah story, right? And Noah didn't have an ark, and he wasn't sailing. I mean, even in the Bible, under proper translation, it talks about Noah as that when he was born, he glowed. Okay, so he wasn't human. I mean, he may have been born to a human mother, but, he wasn't like fully human. And he came here, through a porthole called a uterus, to do some work, some collection work, most likely, helping with on the ground biological collection of animals and biological materials. And so my understanding is that every time a civilization or planet is wiped out, there are some things that are left behind, whether it's flood, sometimes now I'm beginning to think that sometimes when, populations, volcano activity suffocate everybody and everything. I think sometimes they do certain parts of the planet in to get rid of certain types of species, humanoid species that have gone completely wrong. And so that they can, start over again with repopulation of new biologically created humanoids. And then some of us, are implanted sneakily. We're sneakily by extraterrestrial racist star kids. We're stuck into human bodies while they're incubating in uterus. Kind of like we're like a spy. We're like the extraterrestrial spies. And we also come with assorted gifts and talents and abilities. But we can't really trust, any information. I mean, yeah, there's some information that probably is more correct than others, and it's harder to get to and access. But every time that they have a shift in civilizations, they burn everything and they get rid of everything. Like, think about the Mayan civilization or the Aztec. What was the first thing that they did? And they even gloat that they burned all their written, information or tablets, right? Get rid of it so that they can choose to be what the history is going to be, right? So there's some stuff coming about even some really, really old historical buildings that were not really built in the time frame that they said that they were built in, but they may have been added to, but they were already in existence. And that there's a whole missing civilization surrounding it. And in Europe and other areas. And so John Levi, you got to watch a couple of his videos. I think he's spot on with the sound weapons and things like that, and energy, things that they were using. That's why we don't understand any of this stuff, because we're another civilization that were copy pasted, onto the here. So sometimes, depending on what kind of destruction is done on the earth, there are physical things that have been left behind. And then the new people that are copy pasted onto it are humanoids. They may add on to it or develop it or change it a little bit when they show up, right? And because we don't have a lot of memory of this kind of stuff, and so it goes back to some of the designers. So there are ET designers who come in and build these things before they put humanoids into the copy paste into the picture. And then they just think, whoa, I've been living here, right? And then populations develop, and then things go wrong, and they harvest us for food, or they kill us all, destroy us, all the genetics, through flood or volcano or whatever else. And then so those civilizations or buildings or whatever else, the Sphinx. So the key here is they're fraud. Because they're trying to give every time that they copy in there. And I know that the Greys sometimes will say that they're so poorly done because the builders replicate buildings from other planets, or, like people are starting to understand now that a lot of these buildings have, they're like poured structures. They're not carved structures. Nobody's been hanging up there to carve them. And sometimes new additions have been added on where people have carved them, or there's been other stones But it's interesting that we consider this part of our history when it's not part of our history at all. And it was part of a civilization that was completely wiped out, but there are some remnants. And so every time they set the stage, like a theater, they'll incorporate something that they want us to believe. Egypt. Then you've got people who are living in that time frame, right after that scene was developed, and they're copy pasted into those areas. And then, then you have different periods where they put in different kinds of buildings. And yeah, is all of these buildings, no matter what kind of timeline or period they are, and what kind of host of people that they've put in there and then taken away, I mean, it all looks better than what we can do, right? It's all a lot better than what we can do. Comes up over and over and over again because, we didn't do it. And no one in our genetic history did it. Because it was an assembled construct. It was an assembled, developed movie set. And then we were developed to be into that movie set. And we may have added to what was there. But we sure as hell didn't build it. And that's why I think so many people are confused. Because, none of these things go together with us being here. Now, I believe and I know that there are Aboriginal, Indigenous, Native people who have, because their genetics have been clean and of their belief systems and their ability, I think, to be community and work with others. They don't have as much as the reptilian that's been developed in their genetics, which makes them go very bad. People go very bad. I believe that they've survived what they say they have. The Hopis say that they have survived, 4 extinctions, mass extinctions. And I totally believe that without a shadow of a doubt. But nobody listens to them, and this is why I think that they, the people who are involved in keeping the secrets, massacre Indigenous people, right? And try to breed the native out of them to get rid of the genetic memory and the oral history of all of it. But most of us have not survived. Anything that's white, you can be assured has been manufactured. So there's more and more information that seems to come up that is pointing to the fact that these are developed cities, developed movie sets in which we're placed in to participate. And we really need to wake up to the fact that this has happened. It is happening, and things are far worse than the UN or our, countries' governments or, any of these other things, the economy, because there's a bigger lie that people should really, be paying attention to. Something way more crazy that you need to wrap your heads around instead of the assembled construct in which you find yourself in and what you find yourself trying to live in, trying to adapt in, trying to become, and start kind of looking outside of the box and going, wow, this whole reality is like the planet is a continuation of assembled constructs over and over and over again, movie sets to make us have crazy jobs like being an architect. And Bill on my show said last week, he gave kind of like a basic 5-minute blurb on what the Wizard of Oz really means. And when he talks about how, the scarecrow gets a brain, if I only had a brain, he gets a certification, letter saying he has a brain from a college. But just because you have some letter or you have some graduate, thing hanging on your wall doesn't mean that you know crap, because you've been developed in the assembled construct.